Are you going to have the app open for questions?
Yep. I'll get YouTube open.
All right. Right here. So this time I actually put Q&A at the beginning of the title so people know, hey, along with this, you can also ask questions, not just what we're showing.
And you're live on YouTube? There we go.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep. I'm live on both.
It almost feels like YouTube has a slightly worse lag than Instagram.
Does it?
No, like 2 seconds.
Look how it looks on here.
What's up?
Look how it looks on here. See if you center it on Instagram.
Yeah, but what do you look at? Shouldn't you look at that one?
No, because I have the same focal length set up on this as this. So as long as he looks good here, he'll be in focus here.
The video quality of the Note.
I know, right?
It's a lot better.
It is. And I'm going to get Andre's old phone as soon as he gets the newest one. So it'll be better on YouTube
Nice.
in a little bit. But no. I know. 3 screens. But see how he's positioned here? As long as his head's not chopped off here, he's in focus here. And this is set to face.
Oh,
So,
it tracks it, like
yeah.
focus. Nice.
I know, right? It's like no messing around with manual here.
Manual?
No messing around with manual for this kind of stuff. Too many other things to focus on. I'll just say, I think Brandon looks more jacked on YouTube.
I thought you were going to say that.
Because-
I was like, gee.
Like, that's the only reason I don't like wearing the same shirt. We can't have the same name and the same shirt.
Yeah, that's double jealous.
I'll turn my shirt inside out.
It's funny, when I was in middle school, I wore a Hooters shirt to school.
Classic.
Yeah.
I bet you felt pretty freaking cool.
I felt very cool.
I would too.
It's,
Did
yeah,
you?
that's a big deal.
Because you can't just get one of those.
That's a pretty
No,
jock
your mom
move.
has to go in. What?
That's a pretty jock move.
It's a complete jock move. I was walking around the strut. I
I
felt
would
good. And yeah, teachers just didn't get it and made me turn it inside out.
Oh.
That's illegal. I feel like that's illegal.
Actually, it's funny. My mom threatened to sue and
Really?
said, yeah, you gotta let him wear a shirt. It's a family restaurant now. It's not bad anymore.
What's it called?
What?
Corporal punishment, maybe? What does that mean? Let me look that up first.
Corporal. I don't know.
Yeah,
Whoa.
I felt pretty foolish.
Oh, that's like spanking.
Oh.
Oh, no. It's physical punishment, including spanking, slapping, pinching, pulling, twisting, hitting with an object.
Not to
So
sound
our
old,
school
but we
did
had
that.
that.
Not like hitting, but they would make kids do like push-ups until they couldn't, or like jumping jacks. The science teacher would be like, "Oh, you're talking? Do push-ups until the class is over." Kids just dying.
Wow.
Mm.
And it became illegal.
It's a good teacher.
Also, did you guys ever have freshman initiation?
No.
I did in football. It only existed in
In
football.
football, yeah, I did too. But also our school had it.
Our school didn't have it. I think it was outlawed at that point for that exact
That's
reason.
interesting, yeah.
It's yeah. Everyone I talked to like, no schools ever did that. Well, went to like a very rural, like small school, and like all the freshmen you get paired up with a senior, and you basically have to do anything they told you. And like the teachers would reinforce it. Like one kid had to walk around with 2x4s on his joints all day, like elbows.
What?
Oh,
Yeah.
God.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. I had to get up and sing the YMCA dressed as the construction worker for the village people. In the highest pitched voice possible. And you had to because you were worried about getting beat up.
That's awesome, but very cruel.
It's so
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, that's weird. School is weird, man. That's very weird school.
We had the paddle when I was in middle school.
Really?
Yeah, paddle with the holes in it.
Oh,
Yeah, so it's.
how are you?
This is Texas.
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I feel like they're still doing that.
Right.
That's brutal.
No.
That's very rough.
Yeah, we're already
Kids
getting
would get slapped in the back of the head.
questions.
That's also really bad.
It's really
Oh
bad.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
not good.
No.
It's pretty bad.
Wasn't that long ago either. It's a different time.
They actually called it rabbit punching in Texas.
Rabbit punching?
Well, you know in boxing it's rabbit punch
Yeah,
if it's
they
behind
get you in
the
kidney.
head.
Oh, is that what that's
Yeah.
called? Oh.
I'm totally joking. They didn't call it that.
Oh. Well, Ron, I don't know what to do.
No, I mean what I just said
That
is
was
true. Rabbit punching is a real term, but in school they did not call it that.
Oh, God. Whew.
Yeah, the worst my teachers ever did was, if you continue this behavior, you're gonna get your ass whooped in high school. That's what they told me in middle school. They kept on telling me that.
That's probably
Like,
a good life lesson.
yeah, every time I pissed them off, they'd be like, you know, back in my day, they would have stood you in front of class and slapped you with a ruler.
Ah,
I'd be like, okay, well, we're not in that day anymore. It's not the 1900s anymore,
you
so.
don't have any power over me.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, you got a couple questions on YouTube.
Oh, sorry. I didn't actually get notified of that.
Disappeared on my end.
Michael asked if we can do a video about assessment and cues to correct a hip shift in the eccentric phase of the squat. We actually filmed that one kind of yesterday.
Yeah, so
Inflection video.
that'll probably come out in a couple weeks then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Michael. We filmed that yesterday, man. It will be out in a couple weeks, though, as Ron just said. Trying to think, I wonder if I can drop the links into the chat. I might be able to put a link to one of our other videos in there.
On IG, question, why would I have a tendency to shrug on my one side when bench pressing? Am I passively protecting something or just lack of strength and stability?
Kind of like, I'm assuming it's like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a few different reasons. That absolutely could be it. Absolutely could be it. There's definitely a few different reasons that could be happening. It's really hard to isolate it into one thing without knowing how it looks, what your injury history is, and all that good stuff. But it doesn't have to be that though by any means. It could be just a patterning issue. It could be a myriad of other things as well. But yeah, it could be protection mechanism as well.
Yep. The other thing is pretty common to have left-right differences, especially when it comes to like scapular control, which what you described is definitely a scapular control issue. If you shrug up, your scapula is actually moving into elevation when it should be in depression the whole time. So there's a few different self-assessments you can do with that. Wall angel is a really good one. If you have one arm that's like way off the wall, that's a really good test. There's probably a couple others we have as well. Doing things like reverse band rows is probably a really good idea, but being really aware to pull that in. I also think even simple fixes like just making sure your bracing's equal left to right is a big one.
Yeah.
Even with the bench press, I feel like some people have like a tendency to use one oblique and then one foot slightly offset, and then that translates to shoulders.
Yeah, I feel like it could start with the foot being off and it slowly translates up the chain.
Well, I'll answer one more here before we start. Question was, what to do with the core fatigues before the legs in the squat? Probably just need to do more actual core training work. Brandon's gonna film a video on ab rollouts right now. Doing more of those is gonna be good, and really have to, you have to figure out if it's like a positioning issue, like if you don't have great tolerance from a position standpoint, or if it's like a muscular fatigue problem, because those are two different type of issues. I mean, there'd be some carryover between the fixes, but if it's like a real muscular endurance thing, then we just need to do more core work and trunk work. Things like ab rollouts, loaded planks, even potentially loaded carries can be good. Doing longer duration pause squats, things like positional pause squats, pausing at various points. So a lot of different fixes for that.
Ready?
All right.
All right.
If you have any more questions, we'll answer them after this video. I think I'll start here.
Maybe there. Okay, I think I'll move over here. I'll get low. All right. 3, 2, 1.
Today we're going to be talking about the 3 most common faults in the ab rollout. There's three things in particular that tends to happen with individuals that don't quite do this correctly. And what we're really trying to go for here is a stacked rib cage over pelvis position, not going into that open scissor or closed scissor position we talk about quite a bit. And you'll get the most carryover into your actual movements if you do this exercise with the utmost intent, but also keeping that stacked position here. It's paramount that we're doing that to get the most stimulation out of this exercise. Now, the three most common faults we see, first one's gonna be letting the hips drop too low. This can happen in multiple different phases of this ab rollout, but it's gonna look something like this, where the hips are the first thing to touch. Oftentimes, this is actually even gonna cause lumbar extension as we go down. It may not be quite this aggressive, it may be a little bit more subtle, but if it happens to any degree, you're definitely gonna take away the benefit and the carryover from this exercise. The second one is going to be hips riding up too high. So that would look like this. Chest is touching first. Again, not getting nearly as much out of this. I can do reps all day long, very easy, because I'm not getting a ton out of it. The last one is a little bit more subtle. It's going to be a little bit extension, kind of in our T-spine, TL junction towards the end of the actual ab rollout. Again, very, very subtle. This is likely one of the more common faults that I actually see, especially with people that crank out reps really, really quickly. Oftentimes we'll see this. Good position, the very last second, extending slightly. Again, it makes it so much easier and not in a good way. We end up taking a lot of benefit away from this exercise. We want to keep this stacked rib cage over pelvis position. We want to keep a neutral spine. We should be able to almost draw a line from our cervical spine all the way down to our lumbar, keeping good position just like this. And if you notice, if you do it correctly, your nose ends up likely being the first thing to touch, because again, your whole body is staying neutral as we come out and in. Give it a try, fix your ab rollout.
Nice.
People love rollout videos.
We do.
That one you and Kyle did a while ago, like even when our page wasn't that big, was like huge. It was like 20,000 views or something.
And it's funny, because it was the very first video I ever did.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, he
Weird.
tossed me in it. That's pretty, that's a big one.
Yeah, big one.
I like that the visual of that too. That was a really good idea on him.
Yeah. Yes. Got another question. Answer. Question was, can we show scapular movement doing a push-up? Yeah. Brandon, you want to just stand and turn and face that wall? We'll just, you don't even have to go to the wall, just put your hands out like a push-up. So the push-up, it's going to be basically the exact same as the bench press. We want to start in a depressed position, so just kind of relax here for a second, Brandon. So in this position, we really want to drive scapulas down from here. We don't have to like really overdo it, because if you overdo it, you might end up like really over tucking your elbows. It's not really what we're after. What we're after though is like an anchored position, something that's really strong and tight. And another way to get there is to push yourself away from the ground. We don't necessarily need to push ourselves away to the point where we're rounding our back. We want to get a lot of tension through some of those anterior shoulder stabilizers, not just the scapula. And then when Brandon goes into the lowering phase of the push-up, he's actually going to go into greater scapular retraction. So that's the second phase. It's going to be scapular retraction. So scapular is back. What we don't want to do is go scapular elevation and shrug up. That's the exact opposite of what we're after. So scapular retraction, and as he pushes away, scapulas are going to come right back around to where they were, and he's going to be back into that good depressed, slightly protracted starting position. And that's basically the exact same thing that you would try and do in a bench press. And that's what the scapulas should look like in a push-up. Okay, so are we going deadlift on this one, Brandon?
Yes. I feel like I see it. I see it this often in both variations. So I think it'd be nice to cover both.
Yeah. I almost feel like I see it more in the conventional deadlift.
Yeah, I was about to say that. I think that is true.
Okay.
But I definitely see this one too.
Yeah. Let's go conventional. We'll do both. We'll go conventional and sumo. We'll say like even when people get down in a good position and they go like, and then try and get it straight. Yeah.
Yeah, they always want to come back to there.
Ooh. I hate
the same shirt.
I haven't.
No, it's okay. I appreciate how much I hate it from a comedic standpoint, so it's actually somewhat fulfilling to torture myself.
It's funny, just in case something like this happens, I always bring like 4
I know,
shirts
it's
every
so
day to work.
funny.
4 shirts every day to work. So I
God.
spill things a lot. If I have burrito, I'm gonna get hot sauce on it.
When we would do like bigger seminars, even if we all had just like our hoodies on, it was still like, oh, what team are you guys on? Like, we're not. We don't want to be here.
A bunch of baseball players or something.
Yeah. What do we want to title this video? What do we call it in the thing?
I think you had a good title.
It was just improving bracing sequence.
Okay, yeah. We'll talk.
Yeah.
But we can also talk like, yeah, okay. I got it.
Got it?
Yep.
All right. One moment. And in 3, 2, 1.
Same name and the same shirt today. We're going to be talking about improving your bracing sequence in the sumo and conventional deadlift. Brandon, show them the fault that we're talking about here. Even if you get in a good start position, it's really easy to ruin it through poor bracing mechanics. The thing that we see is when people try to create tension is they round their back, elevate their hips to breathe. Now you are going to get more air in by doing that, but more air isn't necessarily our goal. So with a lot of people, go ahead and stand up, Brandon. Now when you, just so I can talk through it here, as you get in position, like keep a really good straight position and go all the way to the bar without getting tight. A lot of people will be really intentional. They'll get down to the bar. This is an excellent position to work from, but then they go and ruin it through their breathing. They round their back, hips come up a little bit, and then they jam themselves back into extension. And that's a real problem because it's not just about how much pressure you can feel and create, it's how you created that pressure and really where that pressure is at. With somebody who's really rounding their back to do this, this is going to produce a lot of intrathoracic pressure. They're going to feel a lot of pressure through their upper body, which is not a bad thing because it's really important to have an anchored shoulder position, but they're not going to have a ton when it comes to the abdominal cavity or that area between the rib cage and pelvis. So our fix for that is avoiding that spinal flexion completely when you take air. And Brandon, go ahead and stand back up. And this would be the exact same sequence that we would use for anyone doing conventionals or sumo deadlifts, with one caveat that we'll talk about at the end of the video. The first thing that we're going to do is find our setup position, and we're going to create like 30 to 40% trunk rigidity. Just a little bit of a brace. That means that we're expanding 360 degrees. We're not going maximal yet, but we're just getting enough to anchor our spine as we hinge down to the bar. Brandon, go ahead and get down to the bar. Now we're going to maintain that neutral spine the entire time because it's much easier to keep that neutral position and reinforce it versus getting out of it and trying to get back into it. So from here, Brandon is going to brace and build and create tension as he goes into the bar and as he wedges into the bar. And that's going to be the fix. Now, this is a hard thing to repattern if you are somebody who's used to jamming your hips really high and then doing like a really fast start position. So I really encourage you guys to do like pauses or eccentric tempo work to really work on your positions. Now, the one caveat that I mentioned is if we have a really big guy or gal pulling conventional, they're physically likely to have too much maybe stomach or even thighs, quads, that get in the way when their belt is on. And that's going to force them to round their back a little bit. So for those people, we will often have them brace a little bit harder in the start position so they don't have to do a whole lot of work at that bottom position. What do you think about that, Brandon? Is that about right?
Yes, that's perfect. One other thing I'd mention here is that oftentimes you'll also notice with these individuals is that the position they rounded at, they go right into once they actually start lifting off the ground. It's a very common indicator. So I'm not sure how I can demonstrate this, but basically they start in a pretty good position. They take this rounded back breath position here, jam themselves into extension, and then go right back to it at the start of the deadlift and deadlift it from there and ask themselves, well, why can't I stop going into flexion? You know, is my back not strong enough? No, it's not that your back's not strong enough, it's that you're not bracing from a neutral position. So we have to maintain good position when we set our breathing and bracing mechanics. It's paramount that we do so.
That's actually a really, really good point too, because almost everyone who does what Brandon just described is going to think they have a start position problem or a lockout problem. And the reality is they never actually created good tension to begin with, so it's actually neither of those. All right, Brandon signing out.
Cool.
Cool. One question here was, could you show any stretch or exercises for improving overhead mobility for tight lats? Yeah, we also did that one yesterday, guys. You guys gotta be on. We did that yesterday. We can show it again. Brandon, I'll run you through the one that I came up with yesterday. Just for the sake of, mostly for the sake of showing you, because I kind of like doing it actually. I almost like doing this more than I liked, well, it's also just kind of different. I like doing it more than I like the banded wall angel almost.
Oh, wow. Okay,
And
that's saying something.
I also had to tie it live on camera.
That's saying something.
Yeah, and it
too.
was perfect. You only had to do it once.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
It is
I
crazy.
don't
Go ahead, put it behind your back just like you would a wall angel. So this is going to be our fix for tight lats in an overhead position. Now, if you have really, really tight lats, I would encourage you to do a little bit of soft tissue work. Just roll it out, change the tone of that musculature, increase the blood flow a little bit. Then once you've done that, come over to this, Brandon, go and get your back on the wall. Actually, turn around for a second. So we have a mini band with a small knot in Brandon's back. That's going to be right at about mid-back, and he's going to keep pressure on that on the wall. You want to get on the wall here, Brandon? Step out just a little bit, keep back on the wall, arms out here, yep, straight, and now we're going all the way overhead. All the way overhead, arms straight. Hands can rotate to wherever you want them. Elbows just need to stay straight, and you need to get all the way to the wall. Elbow straight, elbow straight. This is honestly one of my favorite lat mobilizers. This is actually really, really hard to do, as Brandon can probably attest to. So that's going to be our fix for tight lats, or just improving overhead mobility. Very, very simple drill, effective drill. Any questions on IG there, Ron?
No.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Oh, okay. Bit of a technical question here. Would you recommend the same progression for your squat, i.e. 40% IAP until you walk out, get into position, and then increase IAP to 100% before starting the squat?
I don't know if I've thought about it in the squat too much. What do you think?
Yes, I think it's going to be very different in the squat, because when you set 40% IAP at the top of the deadlift and you hinge down, that's for better hinge mechanics. You're not actually handling load at that point. When you walk out of squat, when you unrack a squat, you have all of that weight's compressing you. It's on your back. So I don't think that same thing would carry over into the squat, because you actually have all of the weight on your back, and you have to maintain position, which is extremely challenging as you walk out, as you unrack it. So I would bias towards 100% IAP, maximal brace. Of course, before we unrack, as we walk out, reset once we get in position. The 40% thing doesn't carry over, just because we're doing that for hinge mechanics, not necessarily having load in our hands at that point in time.
Yeah, I definitely think I agree with that. I think the only thing that I would add to that is making sure that you're fully connected to the bar when you're creating that IAP and bracing. So some people, they'll try to find their position under the bar, they'll brace really hard, and then they'll kind of jam themselves into the bar. What we really need is for that bar to be like an extension of your body, not something that you're just holding. So instead, as you're generating IAP, I like to coach having people put tension into the bar as they're doing it. So they're almost pressing up into the bar. It's almost like taking the slack out of a deadlift bar. They're trying to take that slack out, assuming that you're using like 400 pounds or above. This will work, even if you're using lighter weight, and then really generate that IAP, take it out, and then continue. But it is probably 100%. And when you get to your setup, you also don't want to let that go, right? You want to maintain that brace, and it's a real skill to maintain trunk rigidity while breathing. And that's what we coach within the walkout itself.
Someone said they had audio issues
Sounds like that's
on the YouTube. We may have to experiment with a mic for the iPhone.
Will you say something? Mic that's pretty good. For the iPhone. That's YouTube.
No, that is me. Well, I don't know, but with you guys talking, I don't know.
Say something, Brandon.
Say something.
I don't know, but with you guys. I don't know. There's a delay up here.
There's so much delay.
I don't know. We'll try and figure that out.
Huh. I wonder if it's a front microphone thing, because I have it on rear camera, but maybe it's picking up front mic better. We'll figure it out. Next time. Oh,
yeah, because it's going out of the phone, not the little rabbit foot mic.
yeah. It looks like the Instagram one's okay, but
Also, when did collecting rabbit foots? Did you guys ever have rabbit foots?
I did.
Yeah. Why did everyone have a
Rabbit-
rabbit foot?
oh,
It's
this
a
is a dead
psychopath
cat.
What'd
That's
you
the
just
best.
say?
This is a dead cat. That's what you call
It's a
it.
More
cat.
Dead cat.
You said that with too straight of a face. What's a dead cat?
This is industry standard. Speaking of psychopaths. Okay, he said camera is more clear, so it must be running out of the front mic. So next time we'll set up a mic that's shotgunned at presenters instead.
Dead cat. I can see you as a serial killer, Ron.
Not until you said that.
Please no.
Between your poor fish,
No, that's true.
naming conventions,
Mm,
this fish committed suicide.
it did.
Really?
Catfish jumped out of the tank.
Catfish, wow.
Yeah.
How big was that?
It was only about this big.
Is it like a sucker?
It's an Italian catfish.
Sucker
No, it wasn't. It wasn't a suckerfish.
I
No,
like those.
no. It
Okay, those don't
was,
jump, so I'm a little confused. But
Yeah.
catfish makes more sense.
so maybe I'll have to stand closer for now.
Oh, that's so.
Is that uncomfortable?
Yeah.
Brandon loves
Let's
that.
see the volume though. Yeah, is your volume up on your phone?
You can turn it up.
Do a sound check really quick.
Volume up on your phone.
Oh, that is quiet.
It is quieter.
It is quiet.
Oh yeah, it is actually pretty bad.
Seems like your voice is, yeah, it seems like his voice is quieter.
We'll have to say everything, and Ron will have to say it again.
It's annoying. You'd think that YouTube would have it figured out so that when I'm using the rear camera, it uses the rear microphone. Apparently not. Okay. Anyway, here's an interesting question. Product specific. Any tips for maintaining stack joints on the Cadillac bar? I find I lose position with the mid grip and especially the close grip.
Stack joint as like this probably.
Yeah, so that's actually a really, really common issue. The first place I would go to is where are your elbows? How are you adapting to that grip? Is the first place I go. A lot of people like have a certain degree of elbow tuck with a normal barbell bench press. I'm a wider bench press, so I got that barely legal grip on the barbell. But if I say go to a mid grip and I have that same degree of elbow tuck, my pattern's really dialed in, then all of a sudden I'm here at the bottom. So we kind of got to adapt our elbow position, the position of all that, the rest of our body to that grip. In a wide grip, you'll likely find it a lot easier to stay stacked if you have a wider grip on the barbell. But if you go from a wider grip on the barbell to a closer grip on the caddy and try to replicate those same mechanics, you're going to be in a very unstacked position. So you got to replicate those mechanics by likely tucking your elbows more and actually adapting to the grip.
Probably depends on the length of your arms too, and you'll likely have to touch a little bit lower to maintain that.
That should be a really great video.
One of the questions on here is what are some good resources on programming bodybuilding routines? Seems like there isn't much out there as opposed to powerlifting. I don't know of any good resources either. I do think Mike Israetel and the guys at RP do a lot of really good stuff with bodybuilding. They seem to take a pretty solid approach, in my opinion, that's not just, I think with the bodybuilding, there seems to be a lot more like, I don't know, there seems to be a lot more like this thing worked for that guy type of a thing versus, you know, sticking to the true principles of like adaptation and exercise selection. And you know, another good resource if you want to learn a little bit more is going to be Brad Schoenfeld's book. That is, shoot, what is the title of that?
I know which one you're thinking of. Yeah.
It's like I'm sorry, I can't think of the title. If you type Brad Schoenfeld hypertrophy book, that's gonna give you a lot of really good guiding principles for selecting exercises. And then with bodybuilding, you know, it's almost about doing more over a period of time. You know, from a volume standpoint, that's really gonna make it for you. But Yeah, I think, if you're looking for a program, I'll check out some of the RP templates. I think they're probably pretty good.
That's so accurate though. I never thought about that. The bodybuilding community looks to the best and copies them.
Yeah.
More so than powerlifting.
Yeah.
Powerlifting's more about individualization. That's what's popular right now. Never thought about it like that.
Oh, someone says they found it. Science and Development of Muscular Hypertrophy.
Ah, perfect. Yeah, that's a really good book. I think, especially even if you've been training for a long time, it's going to reinforce some of the things you've probably intuitively known. For example, like squatting is probably better for your quad, like leg development than like leg extensions, right? For example, so I would definitely check out that book, give it a read. It's pretty solid.
Do you want a question from here?
Yeah, sure.
Advices for, first off, the advice in the Cadillac bar. Said thank you. Said he thinks that's his issue. Air will slow at the bottom. Okay. Advices for feeling low back pain low back too much in RDL.
So if you're doing an RDL, you really want to make sure you're hinging properly. If you're feeling your low back too much, it might not be a bad thing, but if it's like painful, that could be a bad thing. Like low back soreness is not terrible, but if it's like a real bad pump and like really limiting your training, that's probably a problem. But I think it comes back to hinge mechanics, making sure that you're not extending when you hinge. A lot of people hinge at their TL junction here versus at their hips. So I really focus on anchoring your hamstrings, which is something I like to think about. The cue that I really like is to think about pushing your hamstrings back and make sure that you're actually bracing. I feel like when people do bent over rows or RDLs, they tend to not think about bracing because they're just kind of going up and down and doing reps. But you really need to focus on your bracing just as much as you would from the floor.
Yeah, I've always had this opinion about this where I think most people for RDLs chase range of motion more than they likely should, and in doing so they tend to get really pitched over and use more of their spinal erectors. I think that just really highlighting hinge mechanics, like you said, using the hamstrings, pushing the hamstrings back to you, and focusing on that more than anything than say chasing a specific range of motion. Also going too fast. I really like, if you're having trouble with RDLs, likely do them with tempo, likely do some hinging drills beforehand. Those are all going to be really good things along with paying attention to your brace mechanics.
Actually, while as we're just kind of wrapping up here, one drill that we all tend to really like for teaching a hinge pattern, if we're not like working with someone in person, is to grab a shoulder rock. Now, you can just use a dowel. A dowel would require you to hold it on both sides, but if you have a shoulder rack, usually you need to load it with like a 25-pound plate or something. But we'll put this on the back, and what this is going to do is going to give you a reference point for when that comes off your back. So if you're hinging and you feel it come off here, you're going to feel that because of the load. Likewise, if you're hinging and you go like this, the weight's going to want to pull you down. So I tend to really like using this for people that I'm not in person with if they have a shoulder rock to teach hinge mechanics.
Keep taking some questions?
Yeah, I would say we could go
Till 2.
Right
You want to grab one off of YouTube?
now. I'm all out.
Okay. I got 2 more here. Question. Was told my left adductor and hamstring as well as right glute med were weak, causing my deadlift to shift to the right. What exercises help prime for my deadlift?
It kind of depends if you're a sumo or conventional deadlifter. It's really tricky to chase like just muscular activation because even if we know or don't know which muscles are like firing or not firing, we really need to look at more of what caused that to happen versus how can we turn that on, because those are 2 different strategies. If we wanted to take a strategy of like muscular activation, you could choose almost any adductor, hamstring, or glute drill and it would work, but usually that's not really the problem. The problem is like your foot stability or how well you're bracing, how well you're controlling your pelvic position. Those are things that really influence which muscles have to work or not, because muscles don't have an independent mind. They receive a signal from other muscles that say, hey, I need you to do this job because I'm not doing this job. So it's not really a situation almost ever where you can just flick a light switch on and off to turn muscles on or turn muscles off. So I still, even though it seems like overtly simple or overly
simplified. Oh boy. I got to get back to the fundamentals of like good foot stability first, make sure that's not a problem, and then move on to drills such as Copenhagen adduction, even shin box work for that glute med activation, and then the hamstring, you know, it's a tricky one because it might just take care of itself by nature of like the adductor actually doing its job too. So I think those are two solid drills that I would personally start with.
Last one here. How to train legs for strength when suffering with sciatica.
Your legs can get stronger. It just depends on if you are talking about translating that to a specific movement. So a lot of people want to transfer their leg strength like squatting and deadlifting, and that's kind of a different conversation, I would say. So if you're suffering from sciatica, I'd say get that fixed and nailed down. Sciatica is not like a permanent disease you have. It's something that's very fixable very, very quickly if you know what you're doing there, or you're working with someone who is competent. From there, I would do things like belt squats, maybe some leg presses, and I'll back up. I would say if we're talking like leg strength in terms of quad strength, I would do belt squats, deficit split squats, and probably even really heavy goblet squats. Things that are reduce the actual axial loading on the spine are going to be where you want to spend the majority of your time. Do you think of any other exercises you would use?
Yeah, I just say it's all about building back up your tolerance to load and being really smart with how you progress things, really smart with how you progress things. A lot of individuals, when they have sciatica, let's say, they'll take, and the first place people go that drives me crazy is like, I'm gonna take a month off. They'll take a few weeks off, take a month off, come back. Where they left off was sets of 5x5 for the squat, so they start with 5x5 for the squat. No, let's go ahead and make a smart plan of again, progressing your body's ability to handle load, starting with exercises like belt squats are killer. There's a lot of things you can do for your legs besides actual loaded movements to strengthen them. But for powerlifting specifically, you'll likely want to have more specificity. So in that case, belt squats are killer, a lot of things like that, and then just slowly working into more and more of the barbell-based movements. And you can also do a lot, take it as an injury as an opportunity and do a lot more of the front-loaded movements. So like, for example, front squat. Front squat's likely going to put a little less strain on sciatica for the most part, at least that's what I've found in my experience. So mixing in belt squats, front squats, things like that, things are going to not need you to hinge at the hip quite as much. And then again, just really dialing in bracing mechanics. That's really what it comes down to, is really working on that while you're building things up as well.
I got a question here, Ron. The question is, in strongman, I'm having grip strength issues. How often should I train my grip, and what would be some of your personal favorite exercises? For strongman, it really depends on the event that you're struggling with your grip strength in. A lot of people are either going to have like an endurance problem, such as using farmer's handles, maybe even sandbag carries that's maybe doesn't quite translate to actual grip strength, but you're either having like a farmer handle issue or maybe like a deadlift issue. Those are two really different fixes, I would say. In terms of how often you should train your grip, you should consider grip strength training if you really have an issue with it, just like any other muscle. So if you look at your squat and you're like, I'm going to train my squat, not necessarily for you, but for like a powerlifter, you'd say, I want to train my squat, try to train it 3 times a week. You should take a similar lens to grip strength. If you really have a grip strength problem, you should treat it just as any other main movement or exercise. And that really comes down to even how long it takes you. Like a real solid grip training session could take 30 minutes to like an hour, because it's not just about exhausting your grip. So just like when you train your quads, you wouldn't just go to try and exhaust them, because you could do 50 reps at 135 and you would be smoked, but you want to actually improve from that. So your grip strength, you still want to have full recovery between sets, just like you would with any strength or power type of drill or exercise. And then depending on whether it's endurance or like real crushing strength that you're struggling with would determine what you actually do. So if it's like crushing strength, like what's necessary for holding on to deadlifts, you're going to want to choose exercises that have you going with a very, very high intensity, because the problem is like neural recruitment more so than anything. So you want to choose exercises that allow you to squeeze as hard as possible, and you want to squeeze as hard as possible. You don't want to just
hold the weight and hold it for as long as you can. You want to squeeze it and be very active. I would do sets of 2 to 3 and have full recovery between them. So like actually really chill out so that your grip can recover. That's something that I think a lot of people miss with grip strength trainings. They just kind of get through it. They add it to the end of their session and then they kind of just breeze through it. But it should be something that's really intentional. If it's like endurance training, then I would do things like longer duration holds of various sizes. And then I would also do finger specific strength, so plate pinches, even like plate holds where you're holding the center diameter where the sleeve goes through. Those are probably 2 of my favorite actual exercises. What do you think, Brandon? Do you have any personal favorites?
Yeah, exactly. The only thing I'd want to add to that is you'll find a lot of individuals, a lot of powerlifters train their grip like a strongman. A lot of strongman train their grip like a powerlifter. We're looking for specificity. We're really looking for specificity here. And it's really common since we are powerlifters. It's really common within the powerlifting community. Powerlifters realize that they have weak grip and they do things that a strongman should be doing. They do a lot of endurance type training with no real high intensity that's not going to carry over well into their sport, into their actual grip demands. So just make sure you're being specific to what you're actually trying to get better at and training that grip quality.
Yep. All out here, Ron.
Yep, we're good here, Chief.
All right, guys, thanks for stopping in with us. We will be back next Monday at 1 p.m. Pacific for another live Q&A.
Cool. I'm still gonna end the YouTube one. So yeah, I'll throw in that mic next time.
Yeah, I would never have thought of that. It makes sense, so.